view that adversity as an advantage, right? If someone else says obstacle, I'm going to say opportunity. Somebody else says adversity, I'm going to say advantage, and look at it that way. It's how you look upon it. Yeah, it's a negative thing, but it can have a positive effect if you look at it in the right way.
Welcome to the Stress to Success Shift podcast with Dr. Irene, where you'll learn powerful tools from world-class experts to bounce back from burnout and shift into success mode in all areas of your life: your career and wealth, health and energy, relationships, and personal life. Welcome to the Stress to Success Shift Institute, my friends. And today, my very special guest is Dr. Joe Perez. Now, Dr. Joe holds advanced degrees in computers and a doctorate in education, along with several IT certifications. In fact, he brings more than 35 years of experience to the stage and to our community as an IT and higher education professional. He served as business intelligence specialist during his 25-year tenure at North Carolina State University. And he's a recipient of the Industry Insights 2021 Thought Leader of the Year Award. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. He speaks all over the world. And last but not least is our podcast. And I asked Dr. Joe here for the very simple reason that I heard him say this, and I absolutely love it and wanted him to talk more with us. I'm a firm believer that if I'm not innovating, I'm stagnating. So, Dr. Joe, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irene. Tell you, that is a very kind and gracious introduction, ma'am. It's my honor to be here with you on your program today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, totally. So, As I said, Dr. Joe, I really wanted to have a conversation with you about successfully managing change and innovation, because really, aside from death, the only constant in life is change.
That's right.
And it's the thing that we fear the most.
Yes, it is.
Right?
That's right. We like to stay in our own little comfort zone. We tend to be so reticent to anything that's going to upset the apple cart, as it were.
Yeah. And Dr. Hans Selye, the father of stress, said that the biggest stressor on humans is uncertainty. In other words, the amount of uncertainty in their lives. And here's the thing. He also said that the greatest factor in resilience, which is your ability to successfully manage and overcome those stresses, is the degree to which you can handle uncertainty. So, Absolutely. Given that our institute and I'm all about helping people shift from stress to success, that's why I wanted you here today, is so that we can give some quick, easy, actionable tools to people so that they can start managing their change successfully, which means that they'll be more resilient, they'll be healthier mentally, emotionally, physically even. Yes. So you have such an important topic and history. No pressure.
None whatsoever. No pressure. Yeah. Talk about your stressors here, right?
Yeah. All right. So I know that was a big lead in, and I wanted to really set you up for success and let our listeners know, just what an amazing conversation this is going to be. So what is, and I know you talk about this all over the world. What is, let's start with what's one thing that about change that people can start viewing it differently, acting differently with it?
Absolutely. So, Dr. Irene, I think the most important thing to do as you start dealing with this, I advocate a three-pronged approach. One that I do when I speak, one that I do when I give advice and counsel, one that I do as I try to live life, live it to the fullest. And one of those is to recognize the three-pronged approach, or three key words that I like to keep in mind that all begin with the letter R: recognize, resolve, and respond. All right. The first of which being recognize, recognizing change for what it is. right? Being able to identify and categorize changes that come into our lives. Sometimes there's changes that come into our lives that, well, we have total control over, right? There are changes of our own making, whereas other changes are due to circumstances beyond our control or imposed upon us in ways that we're unable to predict. And so being able to recognize the difference between those types of changes and understand how to deal with them is the first step. What exactly is change? Okay, well, change is inevitable. You can't avoid it. Change may seem to be good, change may seem to be bad, but you just cannot avoid it. As you correctly said and quoted earlier, that the only thing constant in this world besides death is change. We're going to continue, we're going to progress, and it doesn't necessarily have to be viewed as a negative thing. It's inevitable. It's also inexorable. You can't resist it, as the Borg would have us to believe. Resistance is futile, right? Not going to happen. Resistance is not futile. You can resist, you can go on, but there's certain things that you can't stop the world from turning. Right. Sometimes changes are subtle. Sometimes our changes are drastic. But recognizing those facts and recognizing that you just have to keep on going with the flow. And that's one of the things that I see is extremely important, is recognizing it for what it is and knowing whether it's something that we can have a little bit of control over, or you just got to roll with the punches when it's something that's beyond your control. You can't help it. You can't do anything about it. It's inevitable. It's inexorable. But it's also inspiring because you know that it can help you to become a better person. You learn something that will help you to avoid the same trap in the future. When you know that you made this mistake, well, as they say, right, people who don't learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat them. And learn from it, move on, and do better the next time around. So that's the recognized part of it that I think is the most important first step in dealing with change in a successful manner.
I love it. So let's unpack this a little bit. That I'm such a geek, thanks to my sons, when it comes to like superheroes and Marvel and Star Trek and so. And so as soon as you said change is inevitable, all I could think of was what's his face at the end of Endgame that says, "I am inevitable." Who was that?
Oh, right. Thanos maybe said that.
Thanos, thank you. Yeah. Thanos saying, "I am."
The guy with the funny chin. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
James he's got the big jaw happening. Yeah. Yes.
Right.
So yeah, it's inevitable, and it's right. And whether it seems negative or positive or subtle or drastic at the time, it's a fact of life.
It is.
So the more we can, and like you, I always say, awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Even just becoming aware of it, it takes the sting out of it. Mm-hmm. And it no longer controls you. Like with my clients, I'll say, okay, pretend that it's, visualize that it's a reality TV show and it's happening outside of you. Right. And you're just observing it. Right. When you observe it, it no longer controls you, because it's no longer the thoughts that are thinking you, the feelings that are feeling you. So I love, love, love that you chose your first one as I also love the alliteration, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm such a word geek.
Oh yeah. So, I do that in practically all of my presentations. I either use alliteration or rhyme. I love to do that. See, I was an educator for 10 years before I got into IT. And so I view everything with an educator's heart. I view everything with an educator's mindset. I understand how the learning process works. I understand how the communication process works. And in a way, that kind of helps us in dealing with change as well, because it is like a process of learning and communication, right? Learning by being taught facts, learning by experiencing the changes that come into your life and how you deal with them and how you progress and what lessons that you learn from it and how you can take those lessons learned and become a better person because of it.
Absolutely. And in fact, as I mentioned to you in the green room, that when we had previously talked about these 3 R's, yes, folks, I did know what they were. And that's another reason why I love Dr.
You
Joe.
did.
I said this applies equally, very appropriately to conflict management.
Absolutely.
Right. So for any one of our listeners who is going through perhaps some kind of conflict, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the family, friends, let's even within ourselves, right? That's the number one relationship right there.
Right.
Try applying these as Dr. Joe talks about them. So
Absolutely.
recognize is step number 1. Step number 2, Dr. Joe.
Step number 2. That's right. Resolve. Okay. I advocate 2 seemingly opposite mindsets that I feel should be held in balance with each other, resolving that I'm going to balance deference with determination. Okay. Deference is talking about recognizing that certain things are going to happen. Again, talking about the change being, outside of our control, especially in situations where, we're not just a puppet on a string, right? It's up to us to rise to the challenge and say, I'm not a puppet on a string. I will not be defined by the obstacles that come into my life. I will rise above them by the grace of God, and I will continue pushing forward. So, that's what I mean by deference. And a lot of times it's going to take recognizing that I need to be fluid rather than rigid. Okay, like water approaching an outcropping of rock in a fast-moving stream. See, if I am rigid in the face of change, right, then I'm going to smack into it and be dashed against the rocks and broken into a million pieces. But if I'm fluid in the face of change, realizing that that it is inevitable and inexorable, right, then in that fluidity, as it were, I'll be able to deal with and navigate those obstacles that change often brings. And I will be more prone to view those obstacles as opportunities, view that adversity as an advantage, right? If someone else says obstacle, I'm going to say opportunity. Somebody else says adversity, I'm going to say advantage, and look at it that way. It's how you look upon it. Yeah, it's a negative thing, but it can have a positive effect if you look at it in the right way. Okay. So being fluid rather than rigid, recognizing that, resolving that that's the attitude I'm going to have. So that's the deference part. And the determination is, again, determining that I am going to have the backbone to stand up to it. I am going to have the backbone to own it and not let it own me, right? You cannot change your circumstances. You cannot change what's happening to you, but what you can change is how you react. You can change how you resolve to act upon the things that are going on in your life rather than being defined by them. So that's the balancing of the deference and the determination in my resolve, and be flexible along with it. Be flexible and fluid while I'm going through this whole process of resolve.
You are an amazing educator, by the way. I'm making notes here.
You're very kind.
My head down is because I'm making notes. And I love, again, what you're saying, because one of our mantras in the Institute is flex and flow. I've already told my team that we're getting t-shirts that say flex and flow, baby.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
But the flex is flexible. It's flexing your muscle, but it's also being flexible, right? So
if you don't flex, if you don't bend, you will break. That's just it. It's either bend or break. I don't want to break. I would much rather bend than break. I would much rather flex than fail. I would much rather stand than slop. Okay. It's just in my psyche. I refuse to allow myself to be put into a box. I refuse to allow myself to be defined by these obstacles. It's just a stepping stone to get to the next stage.
Absolutely. And the deference, I'm going to say, total transparency. I used to have massive issues with this myself. And I remember the first time somebody said to me, you need to surrender to it. And to me, I surrendering was a negative thing. It was like giving up. It was admitting defeat. And yet really surrender, what they were talking about, and you call it deference. It's that surrendering the how, surrendering the need to know all of the steps.
Right.
It's not saying you're surrendering the battle or the war or anything like that.
You are not.
It's understanding that most of life is going to be outside of your control. And
that's exactly right.
And when you talk about the rigidity, if you insist on bashing against that fact, then you're going to get bashed, right? Versus
you'll have a sore head and a sore heart.
Right.
And sore hands too.
Versus the surrender is knowing, and I just did another podcast interview with another amazing gentleman, and you two are so much on the same lines, and we were talking about the response, being response able to, it's life is going to happen, the brown stuff is going to happen, adversity, trauma, and we can't stop it from happening. We can choose how we're going to use that to hone our mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic character.
Exactly.
Right. And so to me, that's the balance, as you say, between surrender to the fact that it's kind of like, I know Joe Vitale hates this phrase. It's my favorite. Joe, I hope you're listening. And I hope we can come to an agreement, on part of this. That is, it is what it is. That to me is the deference. It is what it is. To me, that is so beautiful, because there's the acceptance, there's the surrender. I don't see victim in it, as Joe suggests. To me, it is what it is. Now what? Yeah.
Stick those two words on the end every time. And don't stay there. Don't stay. It is what it is. And throw up your hands fatalistically and say, que sera, right? No, what now? Okay, yeah, it is what it is. Now,
sing,
where do I go from there?
Sing.
Oh, yeah, I'm a singer too. Yeah, that's
So, yeah, exactly, right? Like it's understanding that it's the now what.
Yes.
Right. Because it's like the Me Too movement. I can honestly say Me Too, but I've never stopped there. And I think the challenge is, and the danger is, when people stop after it is what it is. So Dr. Joe Vitale, I totally agree with you on that part. And the same thing with the Me Too movement. It has to be, now what? How am I going to use this? Right. And
all
you
about
even
the application.
Said, right. Like you even said that it's, are you going to own it, or is it going to own you for the rest of your life? In other words,
precisely.
I help so many people eliminate the impact of their traumas. And one of the things is that we humans, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Dr. Joe, we are the only animals who can dwell on the past or future pace. So when we're hardwired for pessimism and negativity, so we have this, which I'm on a mission to change for the world. And we're hardwired to dwell on the negative, right? So we are the only creatures who constantly relive their traumas. In other words, we are constantly re-traumatizing ourselves, like reliving it over and over and over
Dwelling
and
in
over
the past.
and over again. And that's allowing it to own you.
Yes, agree 100%.
Versus owning it and saying, yeah, you know what? This happened. It is what it is. Now what?
Let's move forward.
Right.
Precisely.
How am I going to use this to learn, to grow, to become the highest version of me? And, it'll be my passion, my ikigai, my big why moving forward. Right. I love it.
Ma'am.
I love it. So number 3.
Perfect timing. Respond. What are we going to do with the knowledge that we've gained? How do we respond? How do we react? How do we move forward? The practical, it's like the practical outgrowth of the first two, right?
Mhm.
The recognize is sort of like knowing the what, okay?
Mhm.
The resolve is kind of like the why, and the respond is like the how, putting it into practice, okay? And so in this response, as I, whenever I speak and counsel and so forth, um, I like to do things in threes. The thing is a three-pronged response. So within the response, there's three looks: the inward look, the upward look, the outward look. All right. And so in this response, I think it's important to remember principles of embracing, empowering, and encouraging. And there I go again with the alliteration, right? Okay. So the inward look. All right. Look within and say, all right, how do I respond? Embrace the change. That's the first E, the embracing, right? Don't shy away from it, right? Don't wrinkle up your nose and like, well, that's the way we've always done things. I'm always going to do it the same way. Nobody's going to change my mind, type thing. Uh, Embrace it. Own, as we were talking about earlier, own it and recognize that just because things have been done a certain way, as all your life, doesn't mean you have to keep doing it that way. And just go on with it. Embracing it rather than shying away from it. Okay. The upward look, the empowerment part of it. And people who know me know that I am a Christian, and I don't shove it down anybody's throat. But I'm not ashamed of it either. Okay. I try to do a balance here too. And that is that sometimes if the change is beyond your ability to handle, sometimes you may have to look up. Okay. Again, not everybody believes in God, and I'm not going to get into any religious discussion or anything that would, offend anybody. But as for me, okay, as my dealing, sometimes I have no choice but to look up, is to look beyond, all right, whatever deity you believe in, or whatever, some thing outside of yourself to give you the empowerment and the grace that you need to move forward. In my case, the fact that I am a Christian and I believe in God and know that it's only through His grace that I can make it through these things. That's the empowerment that I find. And then the last one is the outward look. If I have been embracing change, right, and I am empowered to cope with change, why not reach out to others and encourage them as well? All right. What I have learned within me, what I have benefited from in dealing with change, in dealing with these stressors, in this embracing of change and the empowerment and so forth. It's time to encourage others. It's time to help them and see, okay, so what can I do to help someone else along the way? What act can I take? What words can I say? What thing can I write? What path can I take that's going to bring joy and gladness into someone else's heart? You may be going through something that's a pain in the whatever, okay, but someone else is going through something worse than you are. Somewhere, somehow, someplace, someone is not as well off as you or me. And what can I do to be of a help to them? Okay. Well, I can mentor someone else, right? I can motivate someone else. I can be that mentor, that motivator. I can help someone else along the way, and knowing what I have learned from the journey, the path that I've been put upon. And it's the thing is if you have gone through something similar that they have gone through, you can sympathize because you know where they've been, and you can go beyond sympathy and have a little bit of empathy, right? Sympathy just feels sorry for someone. Empathy is willing to take action, some kind of concrete, random act of kindness, writing a note, picking up the phone and talking with someone, saying a word of encouragement. See somebody, in the restaurant, say, hey, thank you. You did a great job on my table today. Please tell the people in the cook in the back, this was an awesome meal. We enjoyed. Whatever. Always try to look for something kind and positive and helpful and encouraging to say to someone else along the way. And by all means, smile. I mean, even if your teeth are ugly, at least try to smile. Okay. And communicate that brightness that it's not all bad. It's not all doom and gloom, regardless of how bad things may seem. it's going to get better. And whatever I can do to lift your spirits, I'm going to do that. And I see that as the final component, the crowning achievement, the conclusion of it all, as it were, is that I am going to bring that positive ray of sunshine into somebody else's life. At least that's my goal.
I love it. I love it. So to recap and to flesh out the respond part, the inward, the upward, the outward, I love embracing the change, owning it instead of allowing it to own you,
Right.
empowering, and then the upward, the empowering. I want to encourage our listeners to, just substitute whatever word or name feels best to you. God, source, universe, higher self, higher intuition, even. In other words, you could say it's like, because much as our thinking mind, our cortex gives us, our consciousness gives us so much genius potential, it can also limit us, right? Mm-hmm. And understanding that in quantum physics, we are all one, we are all connected, and that's quantum physics. That's not frou-frou or, just spirituality. It's a fact. We are all part of the same energy field. And so it's really saying, like, you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. So that's to me,
excellent way. I love that, Dr. Irene. That's excellent. Yes. Right? You hit the nail on the head. Yes, ma'am.
Right. And that is thanks to one of my past episode. I did not come up with that myself. So I'm giving, I can't remember offhand who the speaker was, my guest was.
Well, the acknowledgement is appreciated, I'm sure.
We acknowledge and appreciate that perspective, that the looking upward is really just looking outside of our conscious thinking brain that may be stuck in survival mode. So it's really not thinking all that well. Mm-hmm. And saying, I need help. I need inspiration.
You're in the moment and you don't know. And what are you going to turn to? Whatever your faith belief system, whatever if it's a humanistic thing or a deistic thing or whatever, that's what when you're stuck in the moment, you don't think of that. And it's like fight or fright, right? Or flight or fright, and you have to go beyond that to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. So there's the upward, and then the outward, encouraging others. To me, that's the highest level of service. And also our greatest source of self-esteem, our self-value is in when we contribute to others, and not in the way of, donating scads of money and getting our name plastered on a hospital wing.
Right.
I'm not dissing anybody who does that. It's the understanding that nobody even needs to know what we do. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, so when you mentor somebody, you're not looking for accolades or praise or recognition. It's that we are all connected. We are all one. So that rising tide lifts all ships.
Lifts all ships. Exactly. Right. And the satisfaction of knowing that when you have done this, there is no price tag. You can't put a price tag on that, right?
No.
You look into the life of another individual, another human being, that because of something you said, something you did, something you gave, something you showed, that it causes them to be successful and make it through some sort of obstacle or adversity or whatever that they're going through. There's nothing in the world like it. I mean, it's like when you become a parent, you and my wife, the love of my life that I adore more than anything else on this planet. We have two amazing boys, been married 38 years, love them to death. And I love her to death. And it may be the death of me if I'm, but no, she's the best thing that ever, I consider her to be the greatest gift God ever gave me. And to see these two boys that have grown up to be such amazing wonderful young men, and it was us, our undying love for each other that biologically produced them, the nurturing and love and whatever that we poured into them when they were little bitty kids and then growing up. And now to see them full grown and starting one of them starting a family of his own, there's no substitute for that. A whole brand new life that you created. All right. Put that into and I don't want to get off topic, but here's my point in saying all that. I view the encouragement of others in a similar, but not quite so profound as having, biologically created a new life and stuff, but in helping to improve another person's life, of someone that could have been lost, could have been on their way to depression, could have been on their way to a crash and burn, had you not had the dedication and decency to open your mouth, forget about your own stupid stuff, and help somebody else. Don't mean to sound unkind, but we sometimes in this me, we get wrapped up in just me, my. We want to do things that only help us, and that's fine. You got to help yourself or whatever. But, in being involved in doing something that turns somebody around, you do not know what impact you have on someone else. What would have been of that other person had you not opened your mouth and said something, done something, shown something, or given something in this outward look of encouragement to others? And the satisfaction that you get from that. Yeah, it's nice to get praise. Who doesn't like to be applauded? I mean, hey, it feels good, the ego, right? But as you said, yes, ma'am, there is absolutely no substitute for the joy of knowing. And sometimes the other beauty of this, you don't even know. You may not ever find out, right? You may not ever see that person again as long as you live. You may bump into them 5 years later. That's the beauty of it. The adventure of it is that you don't know. And because you don't know, why take the chance on making somebody else's day worse when you can take the chance and make somebody else's day better?
That was a mic drop.
You're too kind.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I so appreciate you taking the time to come help our listeners today navigate and manage change successfully so that they can too innovate their lives, their careers, their health, energy, their beautiful relationships as you have. And I look forward to having you back on more times so that we can just continue this conversation. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe.
Well, thank you, Dr. Irene. The honor and pleasure have been mine as well. I really appreciate you having me on your program. I enjoyed it thoroughly. You are awesome, ma'am.
Oh, I got an awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
All right, listeners. So Dr. Joe's information, his resources are in the show notes. Please follow Dr. Joe and benefit from all the goodness that he has to offer. And as I said, looking forward to having you back again.
It'll be my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Stress to Success Shift podcast with Dr. Irene. Please head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. By doing so, this will help us reach more people with our message. Be sure to visit www.drirenecobb.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. And keep listening for more insights and tools to empower you to shift into success mode and enjoy life to the max.